What's up, everyone? It's good to see you. It's good to have you all here. I actually can't see you. What up, Logan? What up, Gordy? I actually can't see you, believe it or not. But I can hear your spirit through Twitch, through this beautiful streaming platform we have available to us. Guys, I think it's Saturday. I'm pretty sure. Hold on, I gotta like some tweets. Gotta stop everything and like some tweets. Blackberry. That sounds pretty good. Ryan with the 6 bits. Holy shit, dude. That's the biggest donation you've ever done. Thank you. Are you just making it one more every time? Pretty soon we're going to be at like 7 bits. Just watching the Savage Droid stream to mine info I missed. Yeah, there was some pretty good info on there, Gordy. There's some alpha dropped by Savage about rarities and stuff. I think people are kind of keying in and snatching up the rare stuff that people didn't know was rare, but still some good stuff out there. I checked this morning. There's still a lot of stuff that's being slept on. Ooh, nice flamingo. Yeah, gunmetal background's a good one. I didn't realize. Oh, what's the name of the droids? It's like a class. So elite. Black elite is the best, then black, and then there's like Prime. Is Prime the one? What is it? What's the other one? Trying to find it. Third best rank. Oh my god, I almost have it. What is it? Someone in chat tell me. I can't find it here. Purge, that's it. That's it. Yeah, Purge. So apparently I got really lucky. I minted 1 Purge, I minted 2 Dark Elites, and I minted 1 with a Halo. So that's pretty fucking sick in my book. So, we'll see where it goes. We'll see where they all go. Elite Dark 5 ETH? What? Is that true? Damn. That's what's up, dude. I seem to have pretty good luck minting, if I'm being honest. I seem to usually get a pretty good pull. Guys, today, believe it or not, the show's not about savage dogs. It's not about the droids. It's not about the missing watcher. It's not even about me, even though it definitely is. But it's about loot and a billion people. I think the biggest chat we've ever had. Talking about loot. What is loot? What the fuck is going on? Because to my eye, it looks like a black box with white text. Times New Roman, I believe. Apparently it's cool. And I believe people. I've even minted some derivatives. I've got maps and I've got like extended loot or D-loot. I don't know. Whatever loot is like infinite. I've got some of those. So if you guys don't know what is going on, then join me, because I know a little bit, but not nearly enough to actually understand what's going on. So let's get into it. I need to do some setup, so pardon me moving screens around, pardon me moving stuff around, but a lot of people are on voice and not video anyways, so we will just let it ride. We'll get into it, and hopefully we'll learn some shit. All right, without further ado, please give a round of applause to the Loot Crew. Hey guys.
They'll figure it out.
We're live.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, Orphan.
How are you?
Hello.
I just did the best
Hanging,
intro.
You hyped us up?
Yeah, you guys wouldn't believe how cool that was.
We're just gonna have to take your word for it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point.
We have a star-studded cast here. I see that you have us in the Brady Bunch format on
Yeah.
Twitch right now. So thanks for setting us up.
I will be making
I don't know if we're
it
gonna be able
better.
to set. Okay. I was gonna say we're missing some avatars here, but
Yeah.
welcome everyone on the panel to Boiz Chat. We have these every Saturday. Obviously, last week was dominated by loot and all things loot, and Sin had posted a tweet, more or less summarizing what is going on. what is this project? I think I missed like 3 days of crypto Twitter, and I'm completely behind on what this project is. So we wanted to invite some of the foremost creative people in Web3 and within the loot economy to talk about the projects that they're working on. So what I thought we might do, and Orphan, I know you're setting up right now, but if you could pull up the tweet that Dom had posted initially, I sent that to you over DM. That sort of summarizes the initial introduction to loot. And while you do that, I'll just go around the horn here and call out everyone that we have.
Yeah.
So we have Will, co-founder of Syndicate DAO, creator of Adventure Gold. Welcome, Will. We have Dame, content, community, and memes at Rainbow Wallet, also co-creator of Divine Robes community and server. Sursu is building Culture Capital with the Mint Fund and has started the Blackhand server. And we want to talk more about the Blackhand server and everything that Sursu is doing over there. John Yan, who's building Manifest and Loot Mart. Very excited to see where Loot Mart is these days. And then our guest moderator, Sin, of course, co-founder of Her Story DAO. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to speak with us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
So, Orphan, did you find the tweet by any chance?
I did. I'm so fast. Fuck. Wrong one.
You're the quickest.
No, here we go.
So what we thought we
go.
would do, and this is more on Dame than anyone, we wanted to do a TLDR for people in the audience that might not be familiar with Loot and the project itself. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Dame, and maybe you can give us a quick synopsis of the project.
Yeah, totally. From a very high level, it is an on-chain NFT that is basically just each NFT is a string of text in a list format that each piece within the list is a fantasy, sort of medieval fantasy type item, like books or shields or swords. And each one of these NFTs is called a bag of loot, and it contains a bunch of different items within it. And there's 8,000 of them total. It was a sort of experimental project that Dom dropped without giving much heads up or warning or even context for. And as things like that usually do, it sort of caught on like wildfire and dominated the Twitter conversation for at least 7 days. And we're finally getting to a bit of a point where it's slowed down a little bit from all the hype, but there's still very much a lot going on under the surface that I think people are probably, a lot of people maybe not are privy to it or seeing it on their timelines anymore, but it's still happening, a lot of it under the surface.
Yeah, and it really caught on like wildfire. And for me, I think the effectiveness of the experiment was obviously that there was no mint cost. It was just, paying for gas fees. But for a lot of people, it was writing on contract for the first time. I think there were a lot of individuals that were helping others understand just how to do that and how to engage with the contract. And that was really fun. And then the initial prompts were so vague, but there was also enough structure around the thematic approach of what each loot bag was that it just let our sort of imaginations run wild. And you just saw this vast introduction of what they were calling derivative projects or projects that were built off of this initial concept. One of those projects in particular, we're going to jump right to you, Will, was Adventure Gold. And Adventure Gold saw a lot of action within the first few hours. And there's been a lot that's been built and sort of theorized on top of that since then. But maybe we can jump into Adventure Gold and what you've built there.
Yeah, totally. So Adventure Gold is an in-game currency for the loot universe. The idea was essentially there's lots of really, really cool derivative projects being built on top of loot. A lot of them were, for example, permissioning mints using ETH. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if we had some sort of unifying in-game currency where that starts circulating in the loot ecosystem, and that helps the entire loot ecosystem gain steam. So I wrote Adventure Gold mostly in 4 hours in an airport in Oregon, and circulated it with the community over the course of a few days. Um, Launched it live on a Clubhouse chat, and then it just absolutely took off from there. Went in some very interesting directions. For example, like a lot of people thought Adventure Gold was a governance token. That's certainly a possibility for it. People immediately were using it to vote on storylines, so it does have potential as a governance token. But it really was first and foremost designed as a unifying in-game currency for various games built on top of loot. And there's a bunch of exciting projects that are integrating Adventure Gold as a essentially like fundamental layer that can be used to exchange it for experience points in loot wars, or mana, for example, in the Genesis project on loot, which is constructing loot lore collaboratively. And both of those are forks of Adventure Gold that are incredibly cool, where Adventure Gold can act as this unifying layer for the ecosystem. So I think Adventure Gold is super exciting. It definitely went in. Let me put it this way: I could not imagine what would result from 4 hours writing code in an airport. I'd say
Yeah.
we're figuring a lot about it out as we go. But I'm really excited by the people who are working with Adventure Gold and forks of Adventure Gold. It's very exciting to see what people are putting together.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anyone could have expected that catapult that happened that first night. I was in the Clubhouse chat. I was listening to you talk about it. And then I thought to myself, well, I'll do this tomorrow. I'll claim this tomorrow. And the floor had skyrocketed. I ended up selling one loot bag, so I essentially lost 10,000 adventure gold that were more or less rewarded to me for having one of those bags. But I don't think anyone expected the value of each coin to go up that high. What are there any projects that have currently utilized Adventure Gold to this date? I know people are building with it, but I'm not sure if anyone's utilizing it at the moment.
So there was one project that already used it to fund mints, which was very cool. There were a group of people writing lore who were using it to vote on storylines, and then Loot Wars and Genesis are both projects that are that want to use Adventure Gold as the like interchangeable layer between them, which is exciting. That's exactly what Adventure Gold was made for, to unify the loot ecosystem and these different projects on top of it. So yeah, seeing already it be used for mints, voting on storylines, and as a potential future interoperable layer for these different projects is exactly the vision, which is very exciting. And I think that is a really strong potential for Adventure Gold that ties in with the original vision. Obviously, the vote on whether to adopt Adventure Gold as the governance token for loot was split essentially 50-50, and very controversial. But that was never the goal for Adventure Gold. It just kind of took on a narrative of that. But the original goal is something that I see tremendous excitement around, which is fantastic.
Awesome. For those that are unfamiliar, who gets to vote on whether or not Adventure Gold gets to be utilized as a governance token? I guess any of its formats.
Yeah, so there's a few ways that Adventure Gold is used. One is projects can just decide to adopt it. Like they just adopt it and they adopt it. They don't need it. There's no permission required. They just adopt it and they think it's cool. That was the group using it to permission mints. And that's what Genesis and Loot Wars are doing in their potential integrations with it. The other category is like anyone can put up a vote in Adventure Gold, denominated in that, and that's how the storyline votes were done. And then the third thing is there was a discussion over whether Adventure Gold should be the governance token for the loot ecosystem. And I'd say that the first two are things that are going really well. The third category of should Adventure Gold be the governance token of elite ecosystem, given how contentious and split the vote was, looks to be not its projected use, which is which was never the goal of Adventure Gold in the first place. So I don't think that that'll have a significant impact on the project.
Gotcha. John, is there any any chances that Adventure Gold might see its way into Loot Mart?
Yeah, so maybe I can give a quick rundown on what Loot Mart is.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course. So Loot Mart is essentially a product to allow you to unbundle your loot bags into their individual loot items without having to custody or burn your OG loot. We just verify that you have it, you redeem it, and you get these individual ERC 1155 loot items. We're pretty fortunate to have partnered with some really, really talented artists, Dribnet, who created Clip It. All of the artwork is sort of generated through these descriptions, like algorithmically, and so they look really, really great. With regards to Adventure Gold, this is something we've been chatting about actually in our Discord. I won't say that we've come to a decision yet, but I think we would love to sort of be as participatory and composable with the rest of the Loot universe. So I think it probably would make sense, but I don't want to speak for the group quite yet. But it's looking positive.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it. The pixel art in particular, that visually was incredibly attractive. What was the sort of impetus to use that sort of style versus something else?
Part of it is frankly just like there's like 7,000 or so unique items. Hand drawing all of these would just take a really long time, and so a lot of one of these guys named D-Ham, or his name's Raphael, but he was doing a project where he was using Clip It to generate these early pieces of pixel art, again algorithmically. So just kind of the metaverse happening in real life. Like just reached out to him, we connected, and wanted to work together, and then he brought in the original author, this guy named Dribnet, and he's like tweaked the code in the library to like match our use case, and so it's really just a practical reason, and also just really looks sick. So the aesthetic we thought was like really fire, so we're leaning into it.
I love it. Do you guys have an ETA on when the release is?
Yeah, we've been a little quiet this week just because we've been pretty heads down. Right now we're essentially blocked on generating. So generating each loot item image takes like literally up to like 6 to 7 minutes on AWS to render. Yeah, it's non-trivial compute, and so we asked for an increased quota. We weren't able to get it, so it's just taking time. I think we'll have all of the images rendered by the end of the weekend, and then hopefully we can launch next week.
Oh wow, awesome! That's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
When did you conceptualize the Loot Mart project? When did that idea come to you?
It was sort of we weren't necessarily the first. I think it was like a logical thing that needed to get done, or a logical feature that would sort of enable more applications to be built. I think some of the guys at Paradigm, like Anish, had built an unbundler as well, but I think theirs custodies your OG loot. We sort of saw the original loot bags, and we're like, okay, this is really cool. Wouldn't it be cooler if you could upgrade your adventure by trading the different loot items, and maybe even having Pokemon style gaming where different items or different weapons have different properties, you can code logic on them. So having them all the items be separated into individual things you could use just made sense. So that was like the first logical thing to build.
I can't wait to engage with it. Are there, maybe this has already been answered and I missed it, but maybe this is for more of people watching right now, there are derivatives referred to as extension loot or X loot and M loot. M loot was based on the project that Dom had originally built. He released it as an example of what can be done with synthetic loot, a separate contract. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Are there intentions to incorporate the other derivatives, John?
So yeah, we've gotten a lot of my DMs have been flooded by this question. I think we're prioritizing OG loot, but there's only like less than 8,000 of these out there, right? So like the dream is to make the loot universe a lot bigger in scale, and I think that's really important. So we do want to support these other derivative projects. It's just a matter of like how much resources we have. Everyone's doing this like kind of part-time and for fun. So we're a pretty small team. So eventually we will try to support these other derivatives, I think starting with mLoot. But for our launch, it'll just be OG loot.
Okay, that's exciting for the larger community too.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
great. So we're gonna jump to you, man. I saw you talking about right off the bat a D&D specific game built on loot, and I think that's evolved pretty quickly too. And I'm not actually familiar with where you guys sit with that, but what are you building over in Blackhand, and can you give us a little breakdown of that?
Absolutely. So Blackhand is a decentralized gaming community with a big focus on esports and competitive play, but also largely now growing into being a pervasive force in all of the gaming industry. So kind of creating infrastructure to have folks break into the industry, whether they're working traditionally or being a part of crypto native communities. And facilitating game development, which is part of like this loot project that I'm going to talk about in 2 seconds. And of course, like standing up for better player advocacy within the esports circuit and to develop really cool leagues so that there's a level of inclusivity for all types of players. So we're really excited to be kind of making a lot of noise recently. And when I saw loot, it instantly became a thing where I was like, well, I already host like Dungeons and Dragons sessions like in our Discord already. It would be really fun to do D&D sessions with loot, but then I was like, what if we could do things on chain? And there's a website that we use called Roll20 that sucks. Like I hate it. Like it's not that intuitive for me, and so I wanted to figure out.
I'm familiar with that one too.
Exactly.
Yeah, Roll20 is the worst.
So I was
it's
like,
bad.
what if we just built like Loot20 and just had like its own sort of dynamic ecosystem in which derivatives could build on top of this campaign builder or campaign wrapper, in a sense, is what we're really making. And so like you can, as a DM, you can say, okay, we're going to have all different types of loot characters available. So you can use like regular loot, like M loot, X loot, synthetic as like your character choice. Okay, then like what about like rarities and statistics and like all the other different abilities that allow you to roll for stats and things of that nature? Well, we can include those derivative projects as well. And then at this point, now that you've built somewhat of a campaign that allows many different types of derivative projects to play, then we now get into sort of like this game builder. And there's a group of loot folks that are creating what's called encounters. And so hopefully we're building with them to kind of like help us make like the action states. So what happens when you roll initiative, or what happens when you're fighting against a boss? How can we kind of like create the other narrative beats into like creating a comprehensive one-shot D&D campaign that you can roll up easily? So that's kind of like our goal. We got like a cool like 10th budget that we're using to initially bootstrap it. But our goal is to get this out towards the end of the year and then have folks play with it.
I can't wait.
That's awesome.
Yeah, me neither.
That's awesome.
I'm super stoked about it.
Yeah.
This is a little
Yeah,
off
we were
tangent,
Orphan and
but
that?
Has anyone here played Tailspire? Because we were talking about Roll20, and like Tailspire looks kind of cool, but yeah, anything better than Roll20 would be awesome. I think
agree.
that sounds fun. That sounds like a really great project.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we're super stoked on it. We finally got some really good people around us. We're hopefully getting a really dope concept artist who worked on Doom Eternal to kind of help us out with some of the actual visuals. Like shit is gonna get fucking crazy. Especially like I'm really hoping we pull this off and facilitate this right. I think it'll be a really dope addition to the universe. So.
Oh yeah.
I love the collaborative layer of like using people that are building game mechanisms as well, like to do the action as well. I think that's super, super, super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I figure it's like if we can be the testing ground for other derivative loot projects to build on top of and to deploy in a like storytelling narrative perspective, then the idea is to sort of invite what other type of cool stories can you build and what other type of cool derivatives can you glean, not just like making, let's say, like characters or pets or companions, but perhaps even quest lines or other interesting side characters or even creating more expansive worlds that people can dive into, whether they're using dynamic maps or just like a regular text AI system. There's a whole host of different things that are now available to us. We're essentially scaling up like the most malleable MMO system that we know of. So there's some really cool things we can do with it.
There's also so much promise for overlap between all of these projects that I'm hearing, to be able to sort of equip your character via Loot Mart before you jump into a game that you're setting up in Blackhand, or to be able to incentivize the players with adventure gold as they hit certain milestones within a D&D game. That's the glue that I think is really powerful for all of these derivatives, as well as to sort of like, utilize all of these ideas together, and it just makes the community even stronger.
Absolutely. I think what it's also doing too is it's showing that derivative projects don't have to just be kind of like an artistic rendition or reinterpretation of a work, but it can actually have what I think is really utility. I think most people use the word utility often in this space, but they often just kind of attribute it to like these non-scalable like extras or add-ons. But this is something that actually is it could be very powerful and scalable in a cross-pollination sense. So I think it really changes the game about how people even look at derivative-based projects and takes them more seriously.
And this is what I love about the loot ecosystem is like I was thinking about like what loot really is at the end of the day, and the answer that came to my mind is it's a 10x improvement on modding culture, because suddenly every single derivative doesn't just stand on its own. They all build on top of each other and interlock. So each derivative moves the whole ecosystem forward. Like potentially like the Loot Mart items can be used as weapons in loot wars. I have no particular knowledge of the roadmap for any of this, but like it's intuitive that like Loot Mart items can be used as weapons in loot wars. Like Loot Wars XP could be exchanged for adventure gold. That adventure gold that could then be used for certain wagers in other games, where like maybe you're like maybe you need to like stake a certain amount to be able to join, or maybe you're staking a certain amount on the map comment. All of this creates a really interesting, cohesive in-game ecosystem pushed forward by independent developers who don't even need to coordinate with each other. That's what's super cool. Is like John's fundamental primitive of the items can be used anywhere in the loot ecosystem. And the potential of that is just absolutely huge.
This might be a limit on my technical knowledge, but is that what makes that possible? Is that because it's all on like an open source smart contract that you guys can all see and build off of, or what makes that possible to a layman?
Yeah, so absolutely. The really unique thing about Dom's projects is that all of the data is on chain. With most NFTs, the data is off chain. So if you look at, for example, like CryptoPunks or Meebits, they point to a URL that is hosted at larvalabs.com, and that is they often store this data on IPFS. They often sometimes place this data on chain. Like I believe all the CryptoPunks data is available on chain, for example. But at the end of the day, usually most NFTs point to a central server, and as a result, that data can't be accessed by other smart contracts on chain. Because Loot's data is on chain. Every single Loot bag, you can get the certain elements. You can get each element through function calls, which means that you effectively have Loot as like an API that anyone else can build. So like any other project can just hook into this API and know what weapon someone has, know what headgear someone has, know what know what kind of armor someone has. And that's incredibly cool because all of these smart contracts can now be composed on chain in a way that would be impossible with off-chain NFTs, which is the vast majority of NFTs out there. And I mean, I bought NFTs in 2018, and like the servers went down, the websites went down, like the creators just like stopped hosting them, and it's like, did I own that NFT forever? I mean, I guess I owned a URL forever, and that URL disappeared at a certain point when during the next bear market cycle. With Dom's project, because it's all on chain, the NFT's data will exist as long as Ethereum exists, and that's incredibly cool.
Wow.
And the fact that the data lives forever and the fact that the data is queryable by other smart contracts, that combination is pretty unique and tough to find.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for breaking that down for me. That's really cool.
There's another part of this that's like the culture that I think Loot and Dom sort of established, right? Like none of this, like he intentionally omitted artwork. Like early on, there was sort of this culture of like, you know, free to mint, etc. And I think there's sort of this mutual beneficiality to adding to this in an open source way. Like we're when we launch our you know, Loot items, there'll be ERC 1155s, like an open standard, because we benefit from the composability of other projects being able to build on top of this stuff, and it sort of feeds right back into the Loot ecosystem. So there's sort of this ethos and culture to this project and crypto generally that I think sort of allows or incentivizes people to continue to build on open standards to allow the people to build on top.
Is this a paradigm shift in the way that these projects are built?
I think that it's a really unique form of coordination that's only possible because of crypto. Because like let's say you were trying to do something like Loot in the traditional world. Modding culture exists, to be sure, but like usually there's a base layer from some closed source game that people are building on top of, and they're building on top of within the confines of what the game allows. With Loot, because it's this open source composable ecosystem, people can make anything they want on top. So like there are no boundaries to what you can accomplish with Loot, whereas like in traditional modding culture in games, like there are boundaries. The boundaries is whatever the like original game put out as features. Loot, like the ecosystem can go as far as builders take it. There are absolutely no limits on how far it can go.
Just to take the other side of that, like so agree that that's an incredible differentiation. Essentially the trade-off of that, right, is that because everything is possible, there's the potential for a lot of fragmentation and a spectrum of things that never actually like become, people are, you know, don't actually invest in and build on in a long-term way. So there's trade-offs, of course, but I think it's really interesting what's happening with Loot.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on that, John's point just then is I think one of the things we're going to deal with right now is, now that the hype is sort of, that initial hype wave has gone down, there's still so many people trying to build things, but there's not as much like attention being drawn to them, and it's hard to find things that are really worth following. And I've even noticed like lots of people basically doing the same projects, like two different groups working on the exact same similar project, and then you get this weird dynamic of, well, which one of these is really worth following along with, which one has validity. And I think honestly, it's like the biggest barrier that the ecosystem is going to have moving forward probably is like developing consensus around things. I still don't think that you know, I know me personally, like I feel like I'm relatively well educated about what's going on, and even I am like still struggling to sort of like grasp it at times. So I do think that that's going to be like the biggest barrier to like the Lootverse actually growing very far. But you know, of course, the solution to that is very difficult, especially as people are trying to form, you know, potential DAOs and things around it. It definitely is a lot messier than I think people are initially thinking it might be.
I agree completely, Dame. Yeah, I think that there's an interesting tension in the Loot ecosystem between decentralization and centralization, and you can see that in the burn the keys vote on whether Loot the Loot contract should burn the owner keys. And it's interesting because with decentralization you get complete creative freedom, but also a lot of people will bump into each other. There'll be a lot of duplicate efforts. There won't be it'll be harder to direct funding and resources to groups so that people could like work on it full time and leave their jobs. And then there's the like side towards centralization where like maybe there are derivative projects that are given funding. Maybe there are derivative projects that like through this grant ecosystem, there's like some sort of like a layer to ensure that there's not duplicate efforts and to ensure that everyone is working on really unique things that push the ecosystem forward. And I saw that in Adventure Gold. Like I chose to have no owner reservation, no owner mint, nothing like that for Adventure Gold. I kept the code open source but proprietary because I wanted the Adventure Gold community to decide on forks. And if there were a million versions of Adventure Gold for different projects, Adventure Gold may not be that unifier. And I wanted to reserve the ability for the community to decide like what they wanted to take forward. And there's forks that I've collaborated with where they're clearly building on top of it in a really interesting way. Loot Wars XP and the Genesis project Mana are both like forks of the Adventure Gold code, but they still tie back to this unifying Adventure Gold layer. And I think that like that decision has been I think a lot more controversial than I expected. In my idea, it's like pretty intuitive of Adventure Gold. If it's this unifying layer, the Adventure Gold community should be able to decide like if they want future versions of Adventure Gold to appear or not. And like that's something where that will help unify the ecosystem and make everything stronger. And like forks that are clearly not Adventure Gold should absolutely go ahead, and I've been collaborating closely with them. And forks that are very similar to Adventure Gold should be in the hands of the Adventure Gold community to decide if they want that. I think that like that's a pretty light layer of governance that has been controversial. And it'll be interesting to see whether the Adventure Gold community wants Adventure Gold to be this strong unifying layer and to have the chance to approve like versions of Adventure Gold that might fragment the ecosystem, or whether they decide, oh yeah, let's give up this ability to decide which forks we want to allow, and let's just allow anyone to launch Adventure Silver and Adventure Copper, and maybe that fragments the ecosystem, maybe it makes it stronger. It's an interesting tension that I think the community does need to resolve to avoid a lot of people like doing duplicate efforts in the same direction.
Are you worried that anyone's going to go over your head and make Adventure Platinum?
I would say that how do I put this in a way that doesn't get me more death threats?
Have you actually gotten death threats?
I would say that there have been many forks of Adventure Gold without input from the Adventure Gold community that are do duplicate Adventure Gold. So not forks of like XP and Mana, but like forks that are like the equivalent of Adventure Silver and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that it will be interesting to see whether those forks do lead to fragmentation in the ecosystem or not. Because I do think it's the Adventure Gold's community to decide if they want things to fragment. And these forks that already exist are kind of a test case for that fragmentation.
Sin, you came off mute. Did you want to ask something?
Yeah, I guess my question is, because the ecosystem is growing so rapidly, there's going to be a lot of derivatives. And so what constitutes a project being a derivative of Loot or like Adventure Gold versus a project that's inspired by the ethos and the paradigm shift that these projects are actualizing in the space?
My own personal opinion, and I'd love to hear the opinion of everyone else working on derivatives, is that everything besides the original Loot is a derivative. Adventure Gold's a derivative. Emloot's a derivative. Like Loot Wars is a derivative. Loot Mart is a derivative. Genesis is a derivative. And that's the beauty of it, is that there is nothing that's official. That everything is up for the community to determine whether they want to accept or not and build on top of it or not. I think that that's been a really, really interesting way to see it develop, but I think that there is still a tendency for some projects to be viewed as more official than others. And hopefully that develops organically in the long term rather than a few people saying that it's official. I think that will ultimately strengthen the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everything that's not Loot, like everything is a derivative, and the derivatives are Loot. Like it's kind of the same thing. So plus one to what Will is saying, I think in terms of what's viewed or accepted by the community, that's the beauty of it. It's sort of like market based, right? Like the people, the community choose which applications they want to use, and let the best experiences, the best developers, etc. Quote unquote win and contribute to the Loot universe.
A battle royale. Oh, a fight to the death.
I mean, in some ways it is. Someone had pointed out in chat, like duplicate efforts are a good thing. It's competition. Like I agree with that in some ways. I worry about teams that are working on potential derivatives and not realizing someone else is. So they're, and then what happens when the community assumes one as more official than the other. So competition is great, but I also think that organization and visibility is going to be important for the community to be more effective and work together. How can we do that more effectively, I guess? Like I know and for those that don't know, there's a website called Loot Talk where we can all vote on proposals, or we can raise or create a proposal. How are you all thinking about ways in which we can communicate better or work together better within the loot economy?
I'm working on a project called Rock, Paper, Scissors for Adventurers. And so when anyone has a dispute,
It's not for you, Orphan.
Oh, okay, sorry. There's different types of rocks and papers.
You just go to your kombucha, okay? You just go back to your kombucha.
I'll just be over here in the corner.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I kind of view it to some degree as, there's going to be different flavors for different people. I don't think that there's going to be one sort of established, like, this is the way to do this. I think that we're going to see some folks that are very much going to rally around maybe like the concept of guilds within niche Discord servers. I think some folks, I'm even seeing it like they're just pretty much only conversing and organizing on Twitter. I think there are lots of folks that are going to use the Loot Talk forum, and probably some that aren't. And so, I've even like found myself. I think my biggest, like, not really a problem, but like it is an interesting dynamic with sort of the thing I got involved in early on, which was the Divine Robes concept. In that, when Sharu's created the Divine Robes Discord. Divine Robes were not really any rarer than anything else necessarily. And, people latched onto the idea of these robes as being, an interesting concept, and you get access to an exclusive Discord. And we really loved that concept, and I loved it too, and I jumped into it immediately. The one downside to like that kind of model though is, and I think this is what's going to potentially harm the ecosystem in the short term, is there's just so many people in the space right now focused upon like loot from an investing mindset rather than thinking about the game itself. Like I think I've even become uncomfortable with the concept of Divine Robes, like not because I don't like it or because I'm still very involved there. Like that's something that I'm working on every day, but like I do notice that I become less passionate and interested in loot as a concept and as a project when the more there are people who are just like talking about it from an investing financial like side of it. So like that's like an internal struggle that I'm having, and I'm trying to figure out like how can I maintain my level of interest and passion in this project if there's just like if 75% of the people that I see interested in it are just interested in it from a financial standpoint.
And that's been. Go for it.
Go ahead, Will. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, that's been super, super interesting. Yeah, Dame, I've been tracking the same mentality very closely, and it's fascinating because I think that there's a scarcity mindset that's short-term oriented, and that has surprised me because expanding the loot ecosystem is better in the long term. No builder is going to build for a maximum of 8,000 people. Once you look at the top holders list, it's more like 2,500, 3,000 people who hold loot bags. Like no builder is going to build for only 2,500 or 3,000 users in an in-game ecosystem. So in my mind, like mLoot was one of the best possible things to happen to the ecosystem because it was so many people I know. It was the first NFT they ever minted. And it's like, wow, the first NFT they've minted is going to give them access to this whole huge ecosystem. I think that there's been a very short-term oriented scarcity mindset that the community does need to move past to be able to build a really strong, healthy, growing ecosystem in the long term. I think OG Loot, and I say this as someone with the majority of my liquid net worth tied up in loot bags. I say this as someone with skin in the game on this one.
Same.
Is OG loot is something that I think that like it will always offer substantial benefits in the ecosystem. It will have the most drops. It will ideally have special status in games. It will always be really strong. But we also need to accept mloot, and we need to accept mloot so that builders who are building games on top of this can build for a huge audience of people and not just a maximum of 8,000 users. I think that the community does need to reconcile that. I think that now that some of the speculation has died down, I'm optimistic that it'll get better, but we'll see.
To Dame's point, I think for me, like I talk to my friends that are outside of the loot ecosystem about what they were thinking about loot. I talked to a bunch of people, and I think a lot of people just know that people made money off of loot. They don't realize the significance of this project, which I think could be probably like a narrative or education issue, that people just know loot for like people made bank, and they don't really know much else about that. So I think that could be one of the things that are adding to the stress that I totally understand that you feel. That's just a thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as I think more about the the Divine Robes Discord and even all these other guilds that are forming, is I think probably, Will, this is what you've maybe have experienced with Adventure Gold, is like, because I'm, from a community standpoint, people see me as like one of the creators of Divine Robes. Like there's a sense of a burden that I now carry that I did not opt into. Like I did not want I think the psychological burden that it now carries with it, and so which is sad to some degree, because I do think that you're going to find quite a few builders and leaders in this space that, like, if if the community doesn't shape up and doesn't I don't know, just I mean, Will unfortunately is like the extreme of he got death threats. We are gonna have to be kind of careful, because if we as a community cannot create a healthy ecosystem, then people will start not becoming as involved, which I think is something that we have to be really careful about.
And is that an extension of, and I believe Dom even said this himself, he had this realization where people were seeing it as, with the introduction of mloot or more loot, that he was quote unquote messing with their money.
Yeah.
And so since everything is financially based and people are thinking about just how much money other people are making off this thing, that was the thing that created the toxicity.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. I and I say this as someone who has benefited off of loot. I think that we have several different breeds of types of people who are interacting with it on a financial level. But I still have a large stake in it. I have made money from it, but at the same time, I'm in a position where I didn't drop tons of money on this personally to invest in. Right. And so I didn't come into it with the mindset of I'm dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars into this to invest in it. I just organically became involved with it. And, so I think, I think that unfortunately, people have definitely aped into something that I don't know. I don't want to say I don't believe the apes shouldn't be involved here, but I definitely think that I don't know. I hate to say this, but I definitely think that the apes people who aped into it are definitely could be holding it back significantly.
Well.
I can understand that.
We see it once again. Ryan knows my thoughts on people who irresponsibly put all of their net worth in the peak of an NFT.
Yeah. You went off the other night, and
Dude,
it was well deserved.
They ruin everything because of their bad decisions, and you're right.
Yes.
They hold back projects. If you,
yeah, I mean,
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I of course, watched y'all's, live stream with, the parallel team, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate what they're doing, and but I know at the same time, like they're dealing with that to some degree as well. Maybe not to the same significance that loot is, but unfortunately, like they are having to like walk this fine line of like they're creating this amazing, awesome project, but they're also having to deal with the fact that there's so many apes that are using this for like total like degen activity.
Right. Well, it's always
I
the.
think that the thing that. Go ahead, Orphan.
I was just gonna say the people that are the loudest are the people who have leveraged the most. Like,
Yes.
if you're
Yeah.
you can imagine if you have like 90% of your net worth in loot, like you've liquidated everything to buy loot, and then it goes down, or like things aren't the way you want, you're gonna freak
Yep.
out. But if you've got 1% and you're like, man, I hope this turns out to be cool.
Yeah, and there's not much of a solution to it either. Like, I think the only thing that we really can do as like community members is like make sure that we don't enable people, like we don't
Yeah.
we sort of as a community we kind of try to attempt to censor, like as a community censorship mechanism to try to keep those folks at bay potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing that I think was the most painful to watch for me, is that the initial creation of the project was, this is an experiment. I am literally not charging you anything. I want this to be accessible to as many people as possible.
Yes.
And then when that went crazy and those 8,000 bags were gone, then Dom was like, okay, here's another opportunity. I'm going to show you the promise of synthetic loot and how you can build on top of this. And also, here's an example. Here's more loot. There's unlimited mints. Again, you're just paying gas. But we want to incorporate as many people into this community as possible. And then it's still, even with that initial introduction or prompt, it goes the way that it did.
Yeah.
That's incredibly painful to watch,
Yeah.
because the intention was right.
Yeah, I mean, you even saw it, yesterday when Dom released another experiment, which was this Tamagotchi type thing on the blockchain. Like he had so many tweets where he was like, if you don't understand what this is, don't use it. If
Yeah.
you don't like, it's just like you can put so many disclaimers on something, and like, I even am struggling with this personally now. Like as my Twitter following grows, I tweeted a thread about this the other day of like, the more like eyeballs I have on my Twitter feed, like the less like interested I am in like sharing interesting things to some degree, because I worry that people, no matter how many warnings and disclaimers I put out there, people are going to use the information I give in a really bad way.
Yep.
And then it begets more quote unquote gatekeeping.
Yes,
like maybe you're only
yes.
Yeah. So
It
like we're all in here because we don't want the gatekeepers, and that's what we're so excited about. But then they push you back into
Yes.
a corner where now you're only sharing it with your trusted groups on Discord
Right.
or whatever it might be. It's a vicious cycle.
There's only one solution.
I'm ready for it.
Kindness.
Oh,
Friendship.
I like that.
We have to
I like
we have
that.
to befriend the degens.
Is that the way?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. So this was going to be my sort of closing question, because I know a number of you have to go. Anyone that doesn't, you're more than welcome to stay. But how can we protect this space? How can we continue to build and thrive with loot and incorporate other people? So I'm going to start with Sursu, because we haven't heard from you in a minute. I want to get your take on it.
Okay. And we're talking specifically about saving.
Like loot in particular. Yeah, like how do we protect the space? How do we make people feel included in this experiment?
Got you. Perfect. Yeah. I mean, the first thing I'll say is I definitely want to acknowledge sort of the swift actions that D-Hoff was doing insofar as thinking about how do we sort of expand loot to reach a ton more people. And I think even if people were thinking that like M loot or synthetic loot or whatever may not have been, I know there's a certain OG community, like there's a certain part of the OG community that feels like, oh well, this is not like legitimate and this, that, and the third. But I think what people have to realize is that not every type of project needs to befall like heavy inflation, and that when you have an interesting primitive like this that has brought so much experimentation, that there should be a thought process around, okay, if people are building games around this, what's more enjoyable? A game that only a select few people can play, or a game that many people can play? And I think thinking through that sort of context led to the creation of like M loot and synthetic loot, and I think that was like a good idea. But I think the second thing too is we should be thinking about two things. I think loot has inspired us to be more intentional about maybe with something of this type of rapid scale, layer 2 solutions would be very, very impactful in two ways. First way is less network slog and low cost. It already makes it much more affordable for people to even participate, let alone like minting a loot character. If minting a loot character off of a contract costs you $200, you still can't pass go, let alone just trying to like buy one off OpenSea market. So I think like the first thing is, how do we as a community become more thoughtful insofar as how do we deploy our next level of projects? Can we move can we move the space in a way that adopts more forward-thinking tech to make things more accessible from that perspective? If we can do that, then I think that automatically helps open the floodgates for more experimentation. And I think the second thing is for anyone that's building a derivative project or anyone building a project that could have the same type of dynamic effect that Loot has, is maybe even experimenting with how folks value, or how sort of like maybe changing the dynamic of what a scarcity component does. I'm not entirely sure, but it has me thinking, because from our group at Blackhand, we're acquiring assets so that folks who are a part of our group, part of our community, can have access to these assets no matter what their wallet size is. But I think there's always going to be this question of when games move in this crypto native space, how do we fight against like this inflation that automatically happens as a result of people aping in? How do we also maybe use Merkle root contracts, for example, to then make minting more fair, more diverse, and more open for people to participate in too? I think we should be more intentional about how we set up minting practices, and of course how we scale and build products or services or games or ideas on top of these concepts too. I think those are the two things that'll help create a more inclusive and fair space, and it'll allow more people to have diversity of opinion. So when it comes to governance and when it comes to people actually participating in those snapshot votes, it's more than just kind of the people who have put the most investment in, but now we also have voices from folks who want to participate and now have a voice to do so.
It's an incredible breakdown. Thank you, Sir. Well, we are going to say goodbye to our friends that have to go. Any closing thoughts? I know, John, you probably have to jump, so anything you want to share with us first before you jump off?
Yeah, big plus one, everything Cersei just said. I think, the only thing I'll say is, like, at the end of the day, like, we're trying to have fun here. So I think, like, be responsible. This is ultimately a game. Obviously, it's more than a game, but it's also just a game. So I don't know, just don't forget, like, don't lose sight of that, and have fun and stay safe. Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Good
for being
reminder.
here.
Yeah.
Man.
Later, John.
All right.
Plus one to what John said. I totally agree with and seriously, like, so many great points that he just mentioned. I think that if we focused upon those things, that the space would get a lot better. But thanks again for having me, guys. Like, I really appreciate this conversation, and I think if we have more folks like that, like the folks here in this group, we'll definitely be going in a better direction.
I agree. Thanks for being here as well, Dame.
Yeah, no problem. Talk to y'all later.
Plus one to
See ya.
everything said.
Have a good day.
I think that like, builders love to share their work widely. Builders want to see their stuff be used and have value, and bring people joy. And ideally, that joy goes to as many people as possible. And if people have fun, people enjoy what they're doing, people join the ecosystem, that's better for everyone in the long term. So I hope that people think about the builders just wanting to spread their work far and wide. Also have to head off, but this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate your time.
Talk later.
Thanks, man.
All right. Take care.
The real adventure
Sir?
gold is the friends we made along the way.
That's the bumper sticker.
That's
it, yeah.
true.
Mint that shit.
That's just true.
Well, before everyone in chat leaves, I feel like now's a great time to sort of dissect your tweet, Sin, and also see like where we stand on everything loop based. And seriously, while we have you too, we can talk through that stuff. But how do we do? Like, are we feeling more confident in what loot actually is, or did we get some questions answered, or are there other things we want to talk about?
Definitely, I feel a lot more confident, and I'm also like really appreciative of the fact that we have builders like Sirsu who are thinking about accessibility off the jump. You know, that's great, and it's like really great that we were able to have a conversation with those people. So great selection on your part, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that as a thread in what you guys were doing in Blackhand, Sirsu, and I had only been in there for a few days. So like, hats off to you guys for making that evident and in your tweets and the way that you carry yourselves. I think it's incredibly important that we have more founders or people that are building communities being more mindful of that very thing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been one of those things where I think just being boots on the ground in both kind of like the gaming sphere prior to being in NFTs and then seeing the gaming sphere in NFTs, it's not like there's a stark contrast. Of course, there's a difference in how value is distributed, but what was sort of pervasive was when I think about traditional people playing video games, many people can't even afford a $60 disc, right? And so how do you convince those same people to jump into the crypto native space if now we're not talking about $60 video games, we're talking about games that cost $400, $500, $600, sometimes even multiple thousands of dollars to play in. And so that just becomes an incalculable scale for many people. And if we want to make crypto native gaming a mainstay, then like playing to earn without a cost, or just like finding a way to mitigate cost or to enable more people to play is of the utmost importance. And so we can't really, and also I think too, there has to be operators, or maybe even if it's automated, we have to have some sort of market that helps figure out, okay, what are cosmetic assets of higher value that could deal with inflation that do make sense, and then what are like the assets that you actually do need to play that should stay at a relative either like fixed cost or kind of like some market play is there, but it's very controlled and stable. I think that also is like what game developers and other people who are building in this space should consider, is that maybe there are certain assets that don't deal with inflation because those are core to the game. And if you price out the core mechanics of the game, then it becomes unscalable, and then more people can't play. So it's just definitely something that we're identifying in the space as a super important thing. And then now just trying to build budget around creating a really good example, and then hopefully that catapults into more advocacy in that effort.
Do you feel like the gating factor in some ways is actually L1 versus L2 solutions? Because you touched upon this before, but you're right. Like the gas costs of our current network are cost prohibitive in so many ways.
Right. Definitely. I do believe that it's definitely a combination of how folks deal with and deploy their actual in-game assets. And then it's also the cost of trading and engaging with them, buying them, selling them, the approach of even minting these things from an L1 to L2 perspective. For sure, it's a combination. I think even if people still stayed on L1 or base Ethereum, for instance, but had a better approach insofar as how pricing mechanics work with in-game assets, that would significantly change the game. No pun intended. And then using layer 2 would then obviously completely like throw things in a really good direction. So I'm not entirely sure how people are what their approach is going to be. I would advocate to try to do both at the same time. But if you
Yeah.
had to choose one, I would say, if anything, let's figure out more dynamic and fixed pricing models for crypto native games as a base, and then we can move into how do we scale that with layer 2 solutions.
Yeah, this kind of brings up how Parallel released their recent drop too. They,
Absolutely.
you know, the utilization of our chain to reserve those packs, and then I believe having what was essentially like one mint cost for everything. That was fluid purchase experiences that I've had in any project
Same.
thus far.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's doing that and also saying, okay, like, how else can we facilitate both an on and off chain process to make things smoother and to mitigate costs? And I think, yeah, like the parallel pack drop is a great example of keeping we're like not having a gas war. Two, the market, when the first initial things came out, prices were super high, and then as more people were getting their things, the prices sort of like reduced. And I like that kind of like controlled release, and kind of letting people get their things in batches. It what it does too is it subconsciously, in a way, kind of trains you, as a person who, or as anyone who wants to engage in any market activity, to not be so rush when it comes to purchasing anything. It's like the part of do your own research that I think most people don't exercise enough is patience. There are certain things where you should take your time before making a decision. And if you make an emotional decision in a market, when you get wrecked, it becomes much more personal to you. But if you're making a solid decision, a sound decision, even if it doesn't work out, sure, it stings, but you are much more clear and lucid enough to learn from it. But if you make more emotional decisions, usually you don't learn from that experience. You get burned and you move away from it. You kind of avoid it instead of growing. I think each and every one of us at some point has experienced some level of being burned in the crypto space, whether it's like very, very small or like a big bag. But ultimately, we're still here for the same reasons, because we see it as a really amazing way to change not just our lives, but everyone else's. And so, I think the parallel pack drop really showed, it was a really good example of how you can kind of like reduce FOMO and get more people to be smarter about the purchase habit.
1000%. I actually think that community and user experience is going to prevail here, because the Savage Droid drop the other day also had a very similar minting experience where there was a pre-sale. You would do that stuff ahead of time. It was developed by Block. And then I had the experience of doing the Gremlin Crypto Toads drop just to serve as an example. And that was 100% only gas wars. It was a miserable experience. The Savage Droid experience was a very welcoming experience, and that user experience was very, very thought through. I am hoping, maybe this is wishful thinking, but I am hoping through people experiencing drops like Savage Droids, Parallel, things of that nature, they will start to slowly shift away from any particular drops that do have a mechanic where you basically have to race to pay the most gas to mint something. And I would also hope that project creators are going to start taking notice of those types of drops as well, and understanding that they're putting a bad taste in people's mouths. People are literally like giving money away to miners. Yeah, I don't know. It just does not seem sustainable to me, and I hope that people are starting to take notice and shift in the right direction.
Yeah. It's definitely not sustainable. I feel like at this point, there's been enough projects that have done a successful release without gas wars, that if you have gas wars for your launch, you're just being lazy. There's clear models on how to avoid it at this point. So
now more than ever.
Yeah.
So Sin, and Orphan, I had posted the initial tweet that sort of helped us jump off and then make this chat happen.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we could pull that up, because it's very topical for what we're talking about right now.
I can try. I'm on a
Okay.
janky setup right now. While I try and figure it out, because we dropped from 7 people to 4, and so just all my overlays got messed up.
All good.
Do you guys think that we're in if in our future there's gonna be like a manhunt situation? Let me try. and
What do you
find this.
mean?
Well, because I think that if people are gated out from being able to play these games, the games are going to get more and more intense for the rich people, right? And we all know at the end of the line, when rich people play games, it turns into a most dangerous game situation. And so I'm just wondering if NFTs are facilitating manhunts.
I don't know how much of this question is trolling versus literal.
You know.
And I know that's where you thrive. I know that's what you want.
Mhm. I would like a serious answer to
feel-
my joke question, please.
No, I'm not prepared for manhunt reality just yet. I'm not too concerned about it.
Okay.
So long as we have synthetic loot, I think we're okay.
True. All right, I've got
Well,
the
you
tweet
never
pulled
know.
up. Thank you for humoring me.
Yeah. So there's Dom's tweet, but then Sin had a tweet talking about the frustration she feels
God
about
damn it.
learning about Loot Project,
damn it.
which we
Yeah, I'll
talked.
get
We
that.
did a great deal of education around Loot, which is awesome. But I thought the other part of that question had to do a lot with the hype cycles and the subconscious gatekeeping that starts to happen when people form their own guilds or things of that nature, right?
Mhm.
So how do we avoid that moving forward? Like, how do we, or like, are there benefits to creating some communities that are gate kept, for instance? I guess that's my question to the group.
That's a juicy question. I think it's layered, right? But for the sake of like the loot universe, based on what we've talked about today, it seems that having the most people playing the games and interacting is the best viable outcome. So in this case, gatekeeping this ecosystem wouldn't make a lot of sense. I do see, however, though, that it's oftentimes very unintentional. To Dame's point about like he has gained a lot more followers, and then that comes with a lot more like drama and people to account for. So, you know, it's complicated, right? It's nuanced, and I don't think, you know, like post this conversation that I have a clear understanding of the loot universe, but I don't have clear answers to the problems. Like the governance problem was brought up, and I'm like, wow, it's something I was not thinking about at all. Like, are they gonna decide to go centralized or decentralized? You know, that seems like a really big decision to make that could like change the outcome of all of these projects and all the derivatives, right? Piggybacking to the gatekeeping point, I see the value in not gatekeeping, but I do see how it's unintentional sometimes, and I don't know if there's like a straightforward answer.
Yeah, like what kind of gatekeeping are we talking about? Because, like what's
Well-
being gatekept in loot right now? Are we thinking about something specific?
Well, I think there are feelings about OG loot holders, because now it's progressed to a point where you can't even get in, right? Like, so there's higher importance placed on the people that have those mints or tokens rather. But then there are also guilds, and this is actually, I wanted to redirect this to Sirisu. As guilds were being formed, there were particular ones that were established based on the type of items that you had, which was it's a fun way of engaging too. Like you can have guilds that are, you know, theatrical and sort of doing battle between one another. So it creates some humorous friction in the community. But then you also have situations where some might feel more exclusive than others. So then you are chasing down particular tokens because you want to be a part of that community. You might see like some figureheads that are a part of that community, but you can't get in unless your token is validated, unless you are validated as an owner. So that is the sort of dichotomy of some of the internal guilds and structures within loot, and based on the way that people were acting, OG loot holders were treating extension loot, which is a derivative, or more loot, another derivative, as lesser than. Like, they don't have the same voting powers that OG loot holders have. So,
Yeah.
you know, what is that good? Is that bad? Is that, you know, are we moving in the wrong direction with that stuff? I don't know. But now the community has the choice of, like, do we incorporate those other derivatives as having voting power?
Yeah.
It's pretty complex.
For sure. I think it's like I think what we're seeing is we haven't had a project spawn so many derivatives at one given point in time that actually
Yeah.
have big like sub communities that are moving things. And I think what OG holders have realized is if it weren't for these other derivative projects, you wouldn't have anything else to engage with your loot in. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like we all have to recognize that everyone is bringing a lot of value, and you just being an OG loot holder, just thinking that you just want to hoard the financial value, and also not give the affordance to other communities some sort of governance value or other types of abilities to, you know, move and shake the overall ecosystem, then to me, I believe that isn't it. I think that's something that they should take into consideration a little bit more instead of just thinking selfishly about their bags. Like ultimately, their bag is gonna stay pretty big, especially if when more things are being built on it, folks are gonna want it because loot is gonna be probably attributed to like CryptoPunk based status and all these other things. So, I mean, it's more like if you really believe in the project and really want to support the ecosystem, then let everyone participate. And folks that don't want to participate as much will fall out, and other people who do, because this is all about active contribution and presence. For those that are, then you know it just makes everything better. So for me, I'm definitely more of an advocate of OG loot holders not cutting off their nose and spiting their face, because without those same people building those derivatives, then what are you left with? And it's just it's indicative of other folks who are in other communities that will be a part of a project and kind of wait for the rest of the group to do things so that they can capitalize on that they're not actually contributing to.
We should get OG loot holders should get the loot derivatives to build iPhones for them. There should be a hierarchy of like labor, you know, whatever you need to do to build the loot ecosystem. But
when I was asking the group like what they think we could do to improve the ecosystem, I think the real answer was incorporating you, Orphan,
slaves
in these concepts.
We need slave labor in the loot universe to mine.
That'll go well.
Where does the gold come from? It comes from the mining
That'll
community.
go really well.
No, for real though, all jokes aside, I think that the NFTs by nature are gatekeeping, because you're proving the ownership of a token, and so by its very nature, you have to prove that you own something that someone else does not own. And so I think some of what we're dealing with is the inevitability of hierarchy and systems in the real world flowing its way into the open sourced crypto community. I don't know what is necessarily morally good or bad or the right way to move for this, because there's arguments to both sides, right? If you let a project get too open source, there can be chaos. And if you let it be too closed, you don't get all the great minds coming together and making something that works. And so I think that there's a balance, and I have zero idea how to make that balance or how to facilitate that. But I think it's definitely something that we should continue to talk about and continue to kind of find our way through the dark in this one.
Yeah, I mean, both ends of that spectrum that you just described were essentially happening the first few days of this project dropping. You did have, community deciding on certain things, and then exclusive guilds or groups. My challenge with it had been you have situations where everyone is pushing for communications. I had created a server that was allowing like particular like bag holders into the server, and then when I asked the group community to decide on whether or not a derivative have access to the server, it was a resounding no. My personal opinion was it builds value if you let those individuals in, because the community thrives with those minds and with that interest. But then comes the sort of decision of, do you make that draconian decision for the community that you set up, or do you let the community decide that thing? Because if I let the community decide that thing, I already knew what way it was skewing.
Yeah.
But then I was lambasted if I made any decisions for the entire community myself, you know, and I was leaning toward inclusiveness and community and access. So it's a challenge, but I think to what Searser was saying, it's like maybe you let those people drop out. Like maybe you do make the decision. Like maybe so long as your North Star is inclusivity and allowing everyone to have access to this thing, then maybe that is the right choice.
Yeah.
That's what I was battling with in my head.
Well, this is a microcosm of just how governments work, right? Everyone's arguing about like what system of government, democracy, communism, you know, like what's the best way to rule a group of people, because it's fucking complicated. The best thing that I've come up with,
we're not gonna find the answer here.
the most ideal situation that I think would be possible is a benevolent king. But you also, in order to have that, you need to have the proper incentives and the proper checks and balances in order to keep the powerful leader benevolent. And you know that in humans, that's like impossible to do. It's like, you know, it's such a intricate system dealing with human nature and stuff. It's like impossible to do. But I think that's a balance that I've been thinking about, at least. Like you, in the terms of loot, it's like, okay, well you run the project, you own the IP, you own whatever that you need to do to run the project, but you choose to let people do whatever they want, and you only step in when something is unacceptable or will ruin the project. That's how I see something thriving, but I'm sure other people have, you know, different opinions on that.
I nominate Orphan to be our sovereign leader king.
I'll take it.
It's the worst. That's the worst idea.
It's the best idea I've heard yet.
No.
Marbles for
it
everyone.
will all go up in flames.
Marbles for everyone. You all get kombucha. Your daily allotment of kombucha. Just line up.
Oh dear God. Well, seriously, I know you had to run at 4:30. So did you have any closing thoughts? Any things that you wanted us to consider or maybe be aware of for what you're building over at Blackhand?
Yeah, we're trying to build the largest, most badass decentralized gaming community, period. So if you want to hang out with us, we just released our player and coaching scouting combine registration yesterday.
Can we get a link?
So check us out on our Twitter at Blackhand. I'm gonna put it in the chat here under my Twitch name real quick.
Awesome.
Twitter.com. I think I can post links, Orphan, if I can. Maybe,
yeah,
I don't know. You
should be good. I pretty much have a free for all going on in chat these days.
Awesome, great, cool. So I just posted the link there. Check us out. You know, we have a really dope announcement that we're bringing up on Sunday. We're going to be talking about how we're going to create community engagement in our first season, which is from now to the end of the year. We're initiating what's called the Blackhand Battle Pass. So it'll be a really cool way to have folks who are interested in joining our community to earn hand tokens, the full membership of hand tokens, without having to pay a dime. So very excited about that.
Damn.
Yeah, we're testing out a really cool community model. If it works, then hopefully it inspires other DAOs to find ways to get people to earn. I think earning crypto is way better than buying things in crypto, because at least it kind of gives you a better idea of how you have to contribute to earn value and to create value. And then once you're in a position in which you've been able to contribute, anytime you want to drop something, or when you're now at this place or position in which you want to invest in it, you've done enough in the space where you've built up this like unique knowledge that now you feel comfortable in buying into it. So no longer do I feel like I need
Amazing.
to convince somebody to like, oh, just go buy Ethereum or just go buy Bitcoin. It's like, well, come see what we're doing. You're interested in games, right? Come play games with us and earn crypto.
Yeah.
And then now, as you've been a part of this framework, and now that you've liked it, how would you like to now honestly really be a part of it from a financial perspective? What does that look like? So
That's
really trying to
wild,
like
man.
find a way to answer those really cool questions. So super excited to announce that on Sunday.
Cool.
Our scouting combine is in October. So we're going to be hosting a few different games, Apex Legends. We're going to have Axie Infinity. We're going to be building a team around Parallel. We're going to be building a team around Halo Infinite. And then we have one more
Nice.
game, which is Community Choice. So everyone who's a part of our Blackhand Discord
Ooh.
will be able to vote on the 5th game we build a team around for next year. So
Missing Watcher.
super excited to see what that looks
Wow.
like.
That's
Wow.
awesome, dude.
Wow.
That sounds
Insane.
that's really exciting.
Thank you.
There's a lot going on.
It is. This is like all outside of like the loot project that we're doing, which we can't wait to push out at the end of the year too. So we're gonna be super busy.
Hell yeah.
It's crazy. Can I share the server, or are you guys trying to keep
Absolutely no. Share the server.
Okay, all right.
Blow it up
All right,
for
cool.
sure. Make sure if you join the server, make sure you assign a role, or you will not see any of the channels. Just to
Got it.
give you a heads up. And
Awesome.
then I'll post our site too, just in case anybody wants to check out some of the initial things on us and whatnot. But we got a lot of really cool announcements coming. We've got some really cool sponsors we want to announce, and we're really trying to come in hot. So super excited, and thank you
I
for
love it.
inviting me to this conversation. I really like
course.
talking about community stuff, as you guys may see on my Twitter. So this kind of fit perfectly in the wheelhouse of conversation. So thanks, Sin, for
Amazing.
kind of kicking off the discussion with your tweet. Finding more ways to bring people into the fold is always a big challenge for us to face. But the more we experiment, the more opportunities we have with other people to build on what our successes and our failures are. And so just excited to be a part of the process. And shout out to Orphan. I remember being stream a few weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, whatever. We were talking about kind of like Parallel. This was like post pack drop.
Yeah.
And you made this really dope comment about investing. And I just want to let you know that like when you were telling your community just kind of about like if you are in a position to handle and take care of your own personal business outside of crypto, to do so.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very poignant, because most people really are just thinking about, I'm going to hold my bag forever, but you still have life to live.
True.
And so I just wanted to give you a shout out, because that's an important, mature decision that a lot of people need to hear in the space. So I appreciate you for being level in that.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. I hope people listened.
Trust me, I did.
Well, one person
Good.
did.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
I made some cash outs immediately. I was like, damn, this dude is right. I'm starting to have some business.
Perfect.
It's a good
I love that.
reminder.
Yeah. Very much so.
Well, thanks for being a part of it, man. Thank you for for all the feedback too.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and
I think we lost your audio.
Oh,
Oh.
peace out.
Yeah,
He rugged us.
it's all good.
We've been rugged.
Sarsu, no!
It's embarrassing every
Well,
time.
this was-
It never gets less embarrassing.
Well, that was dope.
Yeah.
What a good chat.
Yeah, it was informative.
Thanks for being here, Sin.
Thank you
good.
for having
Yeah.
me.
What do you got going
Yeah.
on? Anything new coming up for you, Sin?
Doing, like you guys know, Boss Beauties, that's been interesting and a lot of fun. Bridging like the NFT space with like real world initiatives and like interacting with real human beings. It's been cool. And also getting into more making NFTs and like dynamic NFTs that are kind of inspired by loot, text-based, but like poetry. So
Ah,
Oh,
nice.
that's awesome.
thank you. Yeah, I feel like
That's
there's so much we can do with NFTs that, you know, we haven't even like opened the door yet to the potential for like different types of artists and performance artists to come into the space. So I'm excited about that.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like music is still waiting to sort of pop off. I think what Latasha's been doing is incredible too. If you look at her work, like she's really sort of like led a lot of that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we still have to uncover. I think Loot was another example of it too, like bottom up approach where you don't have to charge people anything to do it. So yeah, sky's the limit. We just have to keep having these conversations, protecting it.
For sure.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, awesome. So Boss Beauties is, I think there's a reveal on the 20th, maybe. You guys have like a week of events, and there was like a star-studded lineup that was maybe teased recently. I don't know if that was public or not.
Yeah.
But
It's public. Good
all right.
memory.
Is that the one with Ja Rule?
all right.
Ja Rule the Olympian?
Yeah, Ja Rule's involved. Yeah.
Fuck
Ja Rule
yeah.
the Olympian.
That's what's up.
Yeah. Water polo athlete.
Dude, he's great at triple jump.
Ja's the best. All right, so Boss Beauty's coming up, and then yeah, are you launching any of those personal projects soon, Sin?
I'm looking to, yeah.
Okay.
I'm collaborating with BeatsDAO to do some like spoken word poetry
Nice.
things that are more like crypto native. So really
Amazing.
bringing in literature into the space that it hasn't really been done yet. You know, I mean, we
Okay.
have it via Mirror, which is great, but
Yeah.
I think the NFT space is still pretty visual, like art based. So working through that. So soon.
Awesome. Well, let us know when it drops, and maybe we'll have another chat with you on here.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you.
Yeah. Good
Oh, yeah.
Deal.
What do you got
Well, this
going
was
on,
fun.
Rye?
Thank you for the tweet and for kicking all this off, and I'm glad we had everyone on. Orphan, thanks for having us too, man.
Yeah, man. Do you have anything to show?
I have nothing to show,
That's fair.
but I heard there's something exciting coming up on October 2nd that I hope I have something to show.
We've got an auction coming up, everyone. October 2nd. I'm working on a trailer right now so I can have something to show for this, but it's going to be fucking incredible. If you haven't seen the lineup, then you're never going to see it, dude. I'm never going to show you again. I'm also working on a monarchy. So if anyone wants to be involved as a peasant or a prince or a council member, please apply at my Twitter.
This is your fault, Sin.
I know.
It's been
You
in
did
the, it's
this.
been in the works
Yeah.
since the day I was born, dude. This is my destiny. God King incoming. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Jay's stream is the next stream we're gonna be doing on Monday. Jay is releasing his or he's teasing, announcing. I don't know what the fuck that guy's doing. He does so much. Something on Monday to do with vessels and egos and souls. And I've seen a peek and it's cool. So tune in for that. Keep an eye out on my Twitter for time, and it'll be on this channel unless it's on his. Fuck. We gotta go, guys. Thanks for being here. I'll get to you guys later. Big round of applause
Yeah.
for Sin and Rye and everyone else who joined us today. Peace.
Have a good weekend. Bye, y'all.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.